Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be when she's not that into you. Well, I've got one email that I'm going to go through with you. And this guy brings up a lot of good things that are happening, a lot of behaviors that he's encountering with this woman he's been out on a couple of dates with. And this is something that's so hard for all of us, men and women, to grasp. It's like when we really like another person, when we're really attracted to another person, we tend to ignore the fact that they're not really reciprocating, and it's hard to do. But you got to have the strength and the testicle fortitude, if you will, to borrow a term from Dick Marcinko. And who's Dick Marcinko? He wrote a bunch of books in the 90s that called, he was actually the founder of SEAL Team 6, who obviously everybody pretty much knows who SEAL Team 6 is. And the name, there was really some great books. They were called The Road Warrior, and there was like 5 or 6 in a series about leadership and success secrets, just the approach and the mindset that he instilled to that SEAL team when he founded it. And he does a lot of training retreats with executives and things of that nature. And I always thought that was a great phrase, testicle fortitude. So before we get into the email, I wrote a quote on this topic I want to share with you, and then we're going to go through this guy's email. I'm going to point out a few key things here. And it says, true chemistry between a man and a woman grows and gets better over time. Talking is easy and effortless due to sharing common values, goals, and interests. Those who have true romantic interests will be innately and consistently curious about you. Those who do not will be bored. The conversation will seem forced and one-sided, and they will often make you feel like they are trying to get away or escape from you. Don't confuse someone's politeness for interest. Don't project your high interest onto another and ignore the fact they are not reciprocating. Have the strength to walk away when others don't see your value so you can meet someone who does. That's the key there, is being able to walk away when you notice it's not being reciprocated, no matter how attractive and interesting you find the other person. If you want to have something that's easy and effortless, you got to keep searching until you find somebody who reciprocates that innate curiosity. I'll give you just 2 examples just from the past week that I've experienced in the building that I live in. About a week and a half ago, I was chatting with one of my neighbors. I've been living in this building for, I don't know, about 2-3 weeks, and obviously you'll hear train sounds and stuff. I'm on the 20th floor. Even though the trains are like a quarter-mile away, I guess because there's nothing blocking the sound, and shit just comes through the windows, almost like I'm next to the train tracks. But, you know, it's a really cool building that I live in. And so I was going out in the hall to go to the elevators one day, and I ran into one of my neighbors. And, you know, she's a doctor. She's all dressed up in her little doctor type of fatigues. It looks like she's getting to go to an OR. And as we started chatting and talking, she was pulling this thing on wheels that basically she's taking to go to the office. And her elevator just got in there as I was going to like the trash chute, and so I wasn't going to the elevators where she was. So what literally happens is the elevator opens up, she puts her little case, stands it up, so it's sitting there. Instead of going about her business and, hey, it's nice seeing you, and going about her day, she stops the elevator, and she obviously misses her elevator, and she proceeds to engage me in conversation. And what's interesting about talking with her versus another gal that I'm going to tell you about who I was talking with this morning, who I just met for the first time, really pretty girl as well. She stops and she starts asking me questions about me, and she's curious. Every time I've seen her like 3 times now. She's very curious and always asking me questions. Even when I encountered her and her boyfriend in the hallway, she introduces me to him, introduces her boyfriend to me. What was interesting is her little daughter in the back, hears this. She goes, "Oh, this is my boyfriend, so and so." And her little daughter, who's about 10 feet away, because she was headed to the elevators, she says, "He's not your boyfriend," just like that, which I thought was telling and kind of humorous. But she's with her boyfriend, and she starts asking me, because I was shopping, and I bought a bunch of stuff for my place, and she's like, "Oh, what'd you get?" And she literally wants to come in my place and see some of the things that I had purchased, some of the paintings that I got, and some of the things that decorate my place. It's like every time I see her, she's like that. Like I said, she's getting, one day she's getting into the elevator and she misses her elevator. She sets her little carry-on that she's pulling behind her. She lifts it up so it's sitting on its legs now, and takes her hand off of it, and because she wants to engage me in conversation. And so she's participating in the conversation. She's actually asking me personal questions about myself, and because she's curious and she's inquisitive. And obviously I can tell by the way she looks at me that there's definitely attraction between the two of us, but hey, she's taken. She's got a boyfriend. So, and I remember the very first day I saw her, we were talking, she's like, oh, so you're the new guy that moved in. And then she starts asking me, she's like, oh, you live in, because I live in one of the bigger units in the corner of the building. And she's like, oh, so you live in that place all by yourself? And she proceeds to tell me that she had been divorced. And, she tells me about some of the other women that live on the same floor with me, that they're single. And it's a completely different mindset. And I remember this morning, I was down in the concierge area, and I see this really, I'm filling some paperwork out or whatever, and this really pretty girl comes over, and she's dropping something off, and I was like, wow, you've got really beautiful eyes. And we chatted for a bit, and it's just a completely different experience. You can tell she's just she's being polite. Obviously, I noticed what I thought was attractive about her, which I always do if I think the girl's got a great body, or I think she's got beautiful eyes, or I just think she's gorgeous or intoxicating. Look at whatever I feel in the moment, that's what I say. I don't hold back. I just put it out there. But you can tell it's a completely different vibe. She's not really trying that hard to engage me in conversation, and after a couple of minutes, she just went on about her business. Like in a way, she's there, she's dropping something off, and she's got other places she's got to be. Whereas my other neighbor, who literally, she's on her way to work, and instead she's willing to be late or take a few minutes out of her time to engage me in a long conversation. And it's not a one-sided conversation. She's literally participating with me in the conversation. So that's important when you're talking to somebody and you're trying to gauge whether or not they're really into you. And me personally, at this point where I'm at in my life, I'm only going to go out on a date with somebody who's really mutually interested, because it's easy and it's effortless to talk to them. And all too often, what we do is we see the pretty girl who we really like, but who's not really that interested in us, and yet we try to force things. We try to keep her there talking to us, or we take her out on a date, or we go to kiss her and she turns her head and we get the cheek, versus somebody who's literally asking you, do you live with somebody? Are you dating? Or do you have somebody that's your significant other? I mean, they're really curious about you. They want to know. And it's a lot easier to go out with people who are really curious about you. And every time you see them, they're more curious. And when you go out on dates like that, just like some of the relationships I had that I wrote about in my book, those relationships get better and better over time. They start out being really curious about you, and you're really curious about them. And it's a lot easier to go out on a date with somebody who really wants to be there, who's really curious about you, versus somebody that it feels like fucking pulling teeth to keep a conversation going. So let's go ahead and jump right into this guy's email. There's going to be a few key things that I'm going to point out right away. And he says, hey Corey, quick background. I met this girl on Match.com, and the screening date lasted about 3 hours. It felt very easy, and we connected on many levels. Upon parting, I got the cheek. So you go for the kiss, and she gives you the cheek. That's a red flag right there. A woman who's really attracted to you, what you got to realize is attraction is not a choice. They either like you or they don't. A woman knows instantly, within 3 seconds, if you're attractive enough to the point where she would sleep with you. And it's possible this woman may have been very attracted to you in the beginning, but got turned off. That's possible as well. But the bottom line is, when a girl gives you the cheek, you don't continue calling her or to go out with her. But obviously guys that are just learning this stuff and learning these skills and these techniques, they're still in the mindset, but God, dude, she's really hot. She's really pretty. I really want this girl. But when you get to a certain point, your standards are going to be such where it's a must. You must have that from the get-go, because you're not going to want to go out on a date with somebody that's like pulling teeth to engage them in a conversation where you kind of feel like you're a comedian trying to entertain them all night, because they won't engage you in conversation. You can tell that they're just kind of bored with you. It's like, why would you want to spend your valuable time like that, when instead you can go out with somebody who really wants to be with you, who's really curious about you. And the more they spend time with you, as long as you're doing everything right and not talking them out of it, they become more enthusiastic with you. It's so much easier. It's a completely different experience night and day. So just because she's hot, if she's not reciprocating interest, don't waste your fucking time. So he says, upon parting, I got the cheek, and within an hour, she sent me a text saying how she really had a great time. Well, she could be shy, she could be structured, she could also have a bunch of rules. The bottom line is, even if this girl's really attracted to you, she gives you the cheek, think about it. Women know that when a guy kisses her on the cheek that he's really only interested in friendship. And so if a girl gives you the cheek, that tells you that she's only interested in friendship, or she's got a bunch of rules that she's following. If she's following a bunch of rules, well, guess what? She's holding back. She's not being authentic. You can't have an effortless relationship with somebody that's like that. It requires a lot of effort and a lot of work. And if you haven't dated a lot, that's not really going to be your experience. But it's like the more you date, and when you go out and you get used and you get spoiled to women who like literally will throw themselves at you when you're on a date because they have a high level of attraction in you to start out with. He says, a few days later, I reached out to her to set up a date. I picked her up and the date went really well and it felt effortless. At one point, I reached for her hand across the table and she reciprocated. Well, the idea is that if you've been following what I teach in my book, the key is to be noticing her body language. Is she leaning across the table? Is she leaning towards you? Is she touching your hand? Is she touching your arm? What I see here is most of the initiating is being done by you. And when you do that, instead of noticing to see if she's initiating, what happens is you're doing a lot of the pursuing, you're doing a lot of the chasing, and you ignore the fact that she's not really reciprocating these things. In other words, she's just kind of going along with it. And that's not what you want. You don't want somebody that's just kind of going along with it. You want somebody that's really excited to be with you, that's really glad that she met somebody who she really has a lot of chemistry and attraction with. He says, I then suggested a nightcap at a local haunt and she accepted. We continued to enjoy each other's company, facing me the whole time, and I eventually felt a kiss could be had, so I went for it. She was a little hesitant at first, but then opened up to me. Kind of sounds like she's just going along with it. Because a woman who's really into it will kiss you back right away. This tells me she's holding back because either A, she has low attraction for you, or B, because she's got a bunch of rules. Well, I don't kiss a guy until the 5th date, that kind of bullshit. Why waste your time with that? He says, we then left holding hands, and in the cab we even made out a little more. I could not take her home this time because she had family staying at her place and they would be expecting her. When I dropped her off, she gave me a great good night kiss. I was stoked. I was out of town the following week and she did not know this, but I did follow up to arrange for something midweek of the following week. When the day arrived, the weather was quite nasty and she reached out to me suggesting we reschedule. A woman who's really excited to see you, she's not going to want to reschedule. She's not going to want to wait to see you. Oh, the weather kind of sucks. Yeah, we should probably just stay in and do it another time. That shows a general lack of enthusiasm about seeing you. Those are the kinds of things. If it's me personally, even if it is raining, we'll do something that we can have fun together. I don't mind the rain. If I really like a girl, I want to see her. I want to spend time with her. And therefore, this is the kind of thing that he's projecting his high attraction level onto her and ignoring the fact that she's just not that into him. He says, I actually kind of agreed, and it was nasty out, and I really didn't feel like dragging her out in this kind of mess. Oh, putting her on a pedestal and treating her like a celebrity. Oh, Your Highness, I wouldn't. Heaven forbid, I wouldn't want you to get a few raindrops on you. Oh, my God. She hinted to something closer by her for next time, and I told her we should just reschedule given the weather, and she agreed. So in other words, now she's saying, well, let's do something a little closer to me. What does that tell you? That tells me that she's really not willing to go out of her way to spend time with you. Why? Because you're a low priority. You're like the low man on her dating totem pole. Why would you want to put up with that? He obviously really likes her. He says, I rescheduled to that weekend on a Sunday over the phone with her, and I told her when I arranged a date that I would pick her up. Fast forward to Sunday, and she reaches out to me earlier in the day asking about our plans. Probably looking for a reason to cancel. He says, I had told her at 6 p.m. previously and that I'd pick her up like before. The venue was close by her, And so she said to just meet there. So in other words, I don't want you picking me up. I don't want to give you the wrong idea or the impression I'm really into you. But I'm happy to go out and have you spend a bunch of money and entertain me for the evening, because it's a hell of a lot better than just staying at home looking at the four walls. Think about that. Why bother? It's like when a woman tries to jerk me around and change plans like this, oh, let's just meet somewhere, I'll just say, you know what, let's just do it another night. It's a waste of time. You're going to spend your valuable time and your valuable money to go out with somebody, and she's kind of like, fuck that noise. He says, I was reluctant to do this, but agreed. Upon meeting up, she arrived first. I got the cheek again. Oh, goody. She's really into you, dude. He says, this time, the date was just okay. It did not feel as effortless, and there were a couple of silent moments. See, she's not even hiding it this time. She's not even trying to keep the conversation going. He says, however, she opened up more to me this time. But the bottom line is the date just went okay. See, he's rationalizing in his head. But there's this one little, hey, she opened up to me more. She told me some of her deep, dark secrets. He says, we did not face each other during the date, and I did not get as much eye contact because she just really didn't give a shit about looking at you. And there was little physical contact, plus no hand-holding. When we left, I reached for her hand, and she reciprocated, but upon dropping her off, I got the cheek. No goodnight kiss this time. Hey, but she appreciates the fact that you filled her belly up with some nice expensive dinner. Within the hour, she texted me saying, thanks for a great time as usual. Sorry, I was short at the end. In other words, she feels guilty about the fact that she's just not into you. But hey, thanks for the free meal. It was really great. He says, I guess I'm just really confused. Well, I'm not. She's just not at that into you, bro. He says, from one date to the next, there's a complete about face here. No, she's been pretty consistent that she's just not that into you from the get-go. Remember, she gave you the cheek the first night. I would have never gone out with her. This is why. If you want to beat your head against the wall and go out with women, you just eventually get tired of this. Because when you go out with enough women who are really enthusiastic to be with you, they'll make out with you, they'll hook up with you in the first couple of dates without holding back. Why would you want to put up with this bullshit? But obviously, if you haven't been out on enough dates with enough women, you're going to probably want to be a little stubborn and say, but no, Corey, I'm gonna convince this girl. I'm going to change her mind. I'm going to prove myself to her. It's just not worth it. You've wasted 3 evenings with this girl, basically, and where you get? You get in the fucking cheek, and she's just sitting there, well, look at the time. I guess it's time to go, isn't it? And that way, since you're not dropping her off at home, then there's going to be no awkward moments where she feels like she's got to invite you in or anything like that. He says, my gut tells me not to reach back out to her, as she'd let me know if she wanted to see me again. Yeah, I wouldn't call her again. It's just fucking waste your time. He says, but I've been doing the initiating. I guess I don't know if the cheek means not that into you, or if it means slow down and that she's not easy. I would say it means she's not that into you. If I look at the context of everything that happened on all your dates, this chick just ain't into you. She's happy to go out because it's better than sitting at home. And besides, all she's got to do is give you the cheek and treat you like a friend. And she has no problem going out because, hey, you're all too willing to go along with this. Me personally, I would never call her again. I would delete the number. But if by some weird, fucked up, strange turn of events she calls you and is like, hey, how you doing? Then I would invite her out. But have her come to your side of town. And she goes, oh, let's do something close for me. Just say, you know what? It's been a long week. I'm just kind of in the mood to hang. You know what? Just why don't you give me a call in a couple of weeks and we can do something a little more closer to you. And then each time she calls you, give her the same response. But I would, if I was a betting man, I'd say you'll never hear from this girl again because she's just not that into you, dude. You're wasting your time and you deserve better than this. You deserve literally what you want. You don't want somebody that's on the fence about you. You want somebody that would literally jump fences to be with you, that would go out of her way, that's flexible, that wants to be with you, that's excited at the opportunity to be with you, because aren't you a great catch? Remember, before other people will believe it, you have to believe it yourself. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching with yours truly. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the products tab at the top of your screen, and just follow the instructions. and I will talk to you soon.